Howdy, folks. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm back already. I went like a whole month between the last two episodes of this show. However, when Sean decides to tweet a planet at us, I'd be remiss not to talk about it. So, I'm Kanaju, and this is episode 35 of the Deep Space Travel Break. Normally, I'd say something like, a lot has happened since the last episode, but that was like 4 days ago, so let's not exaggerate. What has happened, though, is monumental. I actually won the 5-win streak event in Pokemon TCG Pocket on day 1. Woo! Talk about a happy birthday. I even published my first YouTube short to commemorate the event. But more importantly than all that, Sean Murray has teased the first No Man's Sky update of 2025, officially. Well, not officially, but you know what I'm saying. A responsible man would refrain from getting hyped and speculating too much, but it's my day off, so let's do this thing. Today's episode is brought to you by my preview impressions of Assassin's Creed Shadows. When I say brought to you, I don't mean Ubisoft paid me or anything. They didn't, but they did let me play the game early, and I had a pretty good time, so link to my impressions in the description below. Okay, let's get to the stuff you actually clicked on this video for. So, Sean Murray, the big man over at Hello Games, recently tweeted out a single planet emoji. For those who aren't aware, when Sean tweets a single emoji, that usually means we're about to get some kind of big update to No Man's Sky. If he tweets it on like a Monday or Tuesday, it usually means the update is about 24 to 48 hours away. When he tweets on a weekend, it usually means to look forward to something this coming week. He tweeted late on Thursday evening, UK time, so I'm guessing look forward to next week? Normally I'd say January 29th, next Wednesday, is the most likely day for release, but considering his timing, I don't know what to think this time. If it is Wednesday though, that's the same day as the new Space-Time Smackdown expansion release in Pokemon TCG Pocket. I'm just kidding, I keep going off track, but between that and full-time work, I'm going to be a busy man next week, one way or another. Another thing to consider when trying to predict this mysterious release is that Expedition 16 Redux, The Cursed, is supposed to end on February 5th. That expedition is narratively driven, and I could see it leading up to whatever's in the next update. Even with the emoji being teased this week, it's entirely possible that Hello Games will wait until the 5th to release the next update. February is a common month for them to release in the past, after all. Since we can't make any determinations either way, let's talk about what we do know. Sean is using a planet to represent this update. I won't go into detail about how wildly inconsistent Sean's interpretations of emojis have been over the years, but I think it's interesting that he's using a planet here. You see, the last time he teased us with a planet was the Earth emoji, and that eventually came to represent Worlds Part 1, the largest update of 2024. Part 2 was teased for later that year, but was ultimately pushed back. But now he's teasing us with another planet emoji. The most obvious possibility is that this is Worlds Part 2. I honestly didn't think we'd see it this soon, but I'm certainly not disappointed to be proven wrong. Worlds Part 1 was a game-changing update. It refreshed planetary biome generation, gave us all new water and weather effects, and brought a lot of people back to the game. It was exciting to explore No Man's Sky again, and it still is. So a Worlds Part 2 update certainly has some expectations to meet. If this is Worlds Part 2, I wouldn't expect the same level of content as the first one though. Hello Games typically release their biggest updates in the summer, with the rest of the year populated by more focused releases, so Worlds Part 2 might be more supplementary. Then again, it could also be bigger, right? I don't know. All I'm saying is we should keep our expectations realistic. Speaking of which, we're not even sure that this is Worlds Part 2. It could just be an update focused on planetary rings. Or maybe it's an update that finally gives us gas and ice giant planets, but it doesn't overhaul anything else. That would be fine. It could be anything, is what I'm saying. Editor Kanaju here. So, while I was putting this video together, Sean actually tweeted 3 planet emojis. So, that changes things a little bit, because in the lead up to Worlds Part 1, he also posted 3 Earth emojis, literally representing worlds, plural. So I'm assuming he's aware of what we associate like 3 planet emojis with. So it makes it seem extra likely that this is Worlds Part 2. But yeah, so if I don't reference that in the rest of this video, that's why. It just happened. But yeah, it looks like Worlds Part 2. I mean, we'll see. Again, keep expectations in check, but You know what I'm saying? Alright, back to the video. Last episode, I talked about some of the technical improvements Hello Games have been working on alongside the flashier content updates. Cross-save is still in beta, so we could see a full release this year. They've also been updating the file system used in their PC versions of the game. You can check out the last episode if you'd like full details on all of that. One point I made in that video is that the last 2 years have kicked off with mostly quality of life updates. Fractal and Omega were both focused on improving existing features rather than giving us all new ones. I was expecting something similar for this year, but that Saturn emoji certainly feels bigger. I said this last summer and I'll say it again now. I don't think Sean would risk hyping people up with an emoji as significant as a planet if we weren't getting something to do with planetary generation. He knows how this community reacts. We see a planet, we think of planetary generation. So while I have no idea what's in store, I am hoping it has to do with planetary generation, right? So for fun, let's pretend this is Worlds Part 2. What might that mean content-wise? Well, there are 2 leads that I think are quite promising. Firstly, we might finally see the introduction of purple star systems. These were accidentally teased last summer with the observation of a purple stellar metal being visible not only in the Portal UI, but also in datamine files. You see, stellar metals are tied to star colors. You get copper and yellow star systems, cadmium and red star systems, emerald and green, and indium and blue. So a new stellar metal implies the addition of a new star system color. That, and it was data mined. So it's very likely we'll see purple star systems at some point this year. Of course, purple in No Man's Sky has meaning, since the Singularity expedition in which you could side with either the Abyss or the Atlas, we've seen purple used to represent the Abyss, in contrast to the crimson red that represents the Atlas. Considering they've been teasing the approach of the Abyss for the better part of a decade, and the current Redux expedition heavily implies it's near, this would be the year to see entire systems under the influence of the Abyss. This could be a total game changer if so. I could see it being implemented in one of 2 ways. The first way would be something similar to the dissonant worlds that were added in the Interceptor update. Those purple worlds featured new resources, new enemies, new points of interest, new lore, new multi-tools, new ships, and more. However, they weren't new planets. Instead, certain existing planets were converted into dissonant worlds. So it's possible that the upcoming purple systems might overtake existing systems. This would make sense lore-wise, as it could be a manifestation of the Abyss's spreading influence over the universe. However, I could also see these systems being added separately, increasing the number of systems and planets in the game. In this second scenario, Hello Games could add all new planets with entirely new terrain generation, if they wanted to. Something they can't do with the existing planets due to respecting players' existing bases. It would also make it easier to gatekeep this new content, meaning it could be catered towards endgame players. Echoes was our first taste of actual endgame content, so I'm hoping we'll see more within Purple Star systems. Considering how impactful Dissonant Worlds were, and that they were added in the Interceptor update, not a summer update, it's actually possible that we see them in this next couple of weeks. Still, don't set yourself up for disappointment, keep your expectations low. So, if we do see purple systems added, they could include new fauna, new flora, new enemies, and even new gameplay. Some people speculated that the content of Expedition 16 The Cursed is actually a taste of what might be coming to purple systems. I won't spoil that expedition for you if you haven't played it, but I highly recommend you play it while you can. It ends on February 5th, so get going. Non-spoiler wise, it includes new enemies and a new survival mechanic. Yes, it's another gauge in the corner, but if you've played the expedition, you'll know it's a little different than other environmental hazards. Considering Hello Games usually migrate expedition content into the main game in some form, I'm hoping we see this stuff in a future update. Besides the expedition content, other clues were data mined last year, notably clues about new planetary generation. So, I said that if this was Worlds Part 2 there were a couple of good leads. The second lead I might expect would be an overhaul to underwater biomes. Worlds Part 1 gave us a huge refresh to planetary exploration, gave us new biome variety, new flora, new fauna, new atmospherics, and more. However, outside of the new water surface graphics, it didn't touch the oceans. It's been over 6 years since we've seen any major updates to underwater gameplay. The Abyss update, released in October 2018, was the last time we got new underwater biomes or gameplay. Granted, we have seen some improvements to underwater fauna variety and animation since then, but It's a big part of the game that's felt underserved for quite some time. I felt the same way about space stations until they were completely overhauled last spring. Shout out to Hello Games for letting me contribute to that update. So, with most other parts of the game recently refreshed, underwater biomes stand out as the perfect candidate for Worlds Part 2. I won't mention exactly what was data mined last year. You can find it on that Bomber Boy's Twitter, but it's clear that Hello Games were working on new underwater assets. So I'm hoping we'll see that soon. My biggest wish is for more depth to underwater gameplay, both literally and figuratively. When the game first launched, sunken buildings were terrifying to explore. They were dark and you didn't have a ton of air, so it was dangerous. Nowadays, oceans feel relatively shallow, despite their depth. Adding a mechanic where it's more dangerous the deeper you go, or that it actually gets darker the deeper you go, would do wonders for gameplay, I think. Plus, with the abyss being so prominent right now, making the depths of oceans feel dangerous would also serve a narrative sort of purpose. Not to mention, I'm always hoping for more variety, so hopefully we'll see some of that. Overhauling oceans is definitely near the top of my wish list. Besides those two main leads, I've kind of been ignoring the most obvious lead, right? The Saturn emoji. Worlds Part 2 might literally just add new worlds in the form of gas giants and ice giants. Ignoring what kinds of gameplay they might introduce, which I'd be okay if all you could do was fly through them like a big cloud, right? Or your ship gets destroyed or pulled in by gravity. Even if you couldn't interact with them, right? Just having them in No Man's Sky's universe goes so far to making the space simulation feel complete. Even if this isn't Worlds Part 2, the emoji does make a strong case for this feature being a part of the update, if not the focus. Before I move on, I'll also mention that there were unused biomes and planetary assets data mined last year. As usual, I won't show them here, but it raises the possibility that Worlds Part 2 might also be another surface biome refresh. Why not, right? In fact, now that I think about it, cave biomes might also be on the menu. That would be incredible. Y'all know I love spelunking in space. So if you're interested in more ideas as well as things I noticed in the Worlds Part 1 trailer, go ahead and check out some of my past videos on the subject. Plenty of possibilities there. Also, I'm curious to know what y'all think might be coming. You never know, it could just be an expedition, right? But I'd love it if you shared your predictions, wish lists, and whatnot in the comments below. After all, I often miss some pretty obvious ideas, so before I close the show, I also want to mention two more things. Firstly, they announced the new expansion to Pokemon TCG Pocket, Space Time Smackdown. It's coming next week, January 29th. The day before that, on the 28th, they're finally adding trading to the game. While the original 151 Pokemon will always be my favorite generation, I have to say that Generation 4, Diamond and Pearl, is actually my second favorite by a long shot. I'm beyond hyped for this set. Give me Palkia, right? Give me Giratina, Rotom, a Torterra. Heck, give me a Roark card. I can't wait. I also completed this week's 5-win streak event, which I was so afraid I wouldn't. But somehow I completed it like day one. So I published my very first YouTube short earlier today covering it. If you're interested in the game or simply have a couple of minutes to spare, please consider checking that out. Other than that, I also wanted to speak briefly about my coverage of Assassin's Creed Shadows. Ubisoft gave me the opportunity to play the game last week, and I published my impressions video yesterday. In case it wasn't clear, I was not paid anything or encouraged to say nice things about it at all. SkillUp straight up titled his impressions video, quote, "I wasn't having much fun with Assassin's Creed Shadows," end quote. So we were totally free to dump on the game if we wanted to. But I actually had a ton of fun with my demo, so my video reflects that. If you're interested in the upcoming title, please give that video a watch. Most of the comments are dunking on Ubisoft, which fair enough, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on the game as well. So with that, I think that's our show. Thanks for watching this far and for sharing your predictions on the next No Man's Sky update. Here's hoping it's a great one. If you enjoyed my speculation and would be interested in my coverage of the real deal when it releases, please consider subscribing. It's 100% free and less of a gamble than Pokemon cards, trust me, so I can recommend it. Speaking of which, I did pull a Zapdos EX from the cards I got on my birthday, so that was fun. Sorry. Shout out to the valued members of the channel. It's $1 a month to get access to some limited perks, but I imagine most of y'all stick around to support my efforts rather than for those perks, so thanks again for your support. I appreciate it. And to you, statistically probable free viewer, Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Adios.